Fáilte Roy Vicarja, welcome back to Undercover Irish, the podcast where we try to uncover Ireland's hidden curriculum. And we're currently coming to the end of Seachtain na Gaeilge, the week of Irish, or the week of the Irish language, which really extends over 2 weeks. And tomorrow is Lá le Pádraig, St. Patrick's Day. So first of all, Lá le Pádraig Honna Díobh Galéir, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. On this podcast, The Corja, from time to time, we've looked at songs and ballads and poems. And we've looked at them as subjects or textbooks almost, in the way that you would get a book or a novel and use it to educate yourself or to learn a little bit more. And I've often said on this podcast that contained within a song or contained within a ballad, often we can find even much more information. And it's no surprise that songs and ballads and poems get passed down from generation to generation, or veil to veil, from mouth to mouth, and contain not just information, but sometimes a feeling that goes with it as well. And today I want to look at Óró sé de Bheatha Bhaile, or Undurd Féine as it may be called. I want to look at this song, and I want to look at it from the point of view of what we can learn from it, both in terms of its own historical timeline and later its writer, or the writer of the more modern version of it, the one that probably will be most familiar to you. Now, first of all, Óró sé de Bheatha Bhaile, it's one of these songs that you might hear in a pub and you might hear it in a protest, and it's no surprise because the song itself, the tune itself, is extremely catchy, it's haunting, and the chorus contains a repetition 3 times, so it's quite easy to learn, quite easy to memorize, and definitely quite easy to join in with. And I suppose in modern times we associate it as a song of rebellion, an anthem of rebellion, a marching song of rebellion. But it originally started out, as has been mentioned by historians and people online, it originally started out in a much different scenario or a much different situation. The original version of it references not Gráinne Mhaol, but Searlas Óg. It's a Jacobite anthem. The earliest version of this song celebrated Charles Edward Stuart, or Searlas Óg. And you might ask yourself, well, why is that the case? What is it about this song, or why is it more likely why Irish people supported this particular person, or some Irish people did? This dates back to the Jacobite Rising of 1745. Now, the Jacobites wanted to restore the Stuart dynasty to, the British throne, so it's a bit ironic, it's a bit unusual. Now, you might ask yourself the question, why did some Irish people support this man at a time when Ireland herself was under not just British rule, but British imperialism and colonialism? And the reasons being, number one was religion. The Stuarts were sympathetic to Catholicism and to Catholics. It's quite possible, of course, that there was a little bit of real politics at play there, but their politics was in opposition to the Hanoverian Protestant monarchy. So effectively, it's a case of shared enemies. Your enemy's your friend. And Irish soldiers had also fought in Jacobite and European armies, so there's a kind of a link there. So in that version of the song, the original version of the song, it actually welcomes him home to Ireland as a liberator. It's something we might kind of find unusual in today's context for 2 reasons. Number one, I suppose if you're familiar with the modern song, it's a Republican song, it's very, very different. And secondly, to think of a time when that was happening, it can challenge our understanding of it, certainly. But it is true to say that the song starts out as a Jacobite anthem and it honours Searlas Óg. But like every folk song or every traditional song, it can chop and change and evolve over time. And particularly songs that go so deep that they can capture a national consciousness, I think. These songs tend to change as the context changes as well. The song, particularly the chorus, was also associated with welcoming people back from abroad, and welcoming people at rituals or family celebrations. But the main part of this particular podcast is going to be looking at the modern version, the version we know as the protest song, the rebel song, the song you may have heard around you at any stage. I can recall being a young man or young boy going to see Steve Collins fight for the world title in the super middleweight championship in boxing. And I remember being moved by hearing this particular song prior to the bout taking place. And again, it's no surprise that that happened because the song is a call to arms. It's exactly what the song is. It's a call to arms. And to understand the modern version of the song, or the so-called modern version of the song, the version that we would be most familiar with, we have to understand two things first. Number one, the author of the modern incarnation of this song. And number two, the context in which he lived. So the writer, or the person that's credited with the modern lyrics, is Pádraig Pearse, Pádraig Pearse. And Pádraig Pearse is a really important person in Irish history. He's most famed for his role as a leader in 1916, the 1916 rebellion against British rule, the 1916 Rising as we know it. But Pearse is a much deeper character than just that incident, although his whole life led a trajectory to that moment. And we see that with this song as well. Pearse is part of a cultural revival that happened at the end of the 19th century in Ireland. Pearse is among a lot of people, a generation of people that are living in a post-Gorta Moor Ireland, basically what some people would term the famine. We have to start there and understand the change that happened to the Irish landscape, the Irish society, and even the Irish philosophy or the Irish mindset at that time. Over the course of an Gorta Moor and the years shortly afterwards, almost 2 million people died of starvation and disease, and almost 2 million people left the country through forced economic emigration. Now, this left a much emptier landscape in Ireland, but it had a massive detrimental effect on Irish culture. Things like the Irish language, which were already under severe pressure from the process of British colonisation. Things like our own national sports, our Gaelic games, our hurling, Gaelic football, rounders, handball. Things like Irish dancing, things like Irish art and culture, and even sporting pursuits in the countryside like stone lifting and road bowling. Because what you had was the vast majority of those people who suffered the greatest during An Gorta Mór would have been Irish speakers, people whose first language was Gaeilge, geographically and class-wise. So the period from the 1850s, the 1860s, the 1870s onwards, a dramatic decline in the speaking of Irish occurs. And the very idea of the nation is under threat. Pearse saw this. He said, look, Tír gan anam, Tír gan changa, gamla scale the other way around. Tír gan changa, a country without a language. Tír gan anam, a country without a soul. And he's part of this great revival that happens at the same time almost. You have organisations like Conran na Gaeilge coming together to save, salvage and promote the Irish language. You have organisations like Cumann Lúthchleas Gael, the GAA, coming together and forming in the 1880s to save and promote Irish sport, hurling, Amánaíocht, Gaelic football, rounders, handball. And Pearse is one of these people. He's involved in the language movement, he's involved in the cultural movement, even sets up his own school. He's part of this generation of people. If they don't save Irish culture, then the nation itself is under threat. The identity of Ireland as an independent nation in the future may never materialise. And so he's part of that generation. But Pearse's aim is much more than just cultural. and it's much more than just the language. Pearse is a Republican, and Pearse's view is that Ireland should be a republic, that breaking the connection with Britain is imperative, and the creation of a republic of equals, as outlined in the proclamation, that's his aim. And so, as Pearse is plotting with others, basically to build a volunteer movement and to build towards a rebellion, he needs a marching song. And he needs a slogan that his volunteers can march to. And just for a second there, it's worth noting that that word, even slogan, which we think of when we think about a caption or a motto, maybe for a company or a grouping or a club, that word comes from Gaeilge. It comes from Irish. Slua Garm. Slua, army or a group of people. Garm, cry. So a battle cry or a war cry. That's the origin of the word slogan. And this is exactly what Pearse does when he writes the lyrics, the words to the modern version of what we understand to be Oro Sheda Vahavalya. Whereas in the past, in the older versions, the saviour is Searlas Óg, or the potential saviour is Searlas Óg. Pearse changes this completely. Instead of Searlas Óg, he puts in Grania Bhaile. Now, to people who may not understand or may not know Grania Bhaile sometimes is described as Grace O'Malley in English or anglicised to it. This was a very important person in Irish history, and it's extremely important that he uses Grania Bhaile in this song because, first of all, she replaces Searlas Óg in the lyrics. It's Grania Bhaile ag teacht tar sáile. So it's Grania Bhaile coming back home. Grania Bhaile is picked for two particular reasons, I believe. Number one, she's regarded as a warrior, so this fits the call to arms. The second reason, there's kind of an echo with Irish history here, where Grania Bhaile kind of personifies Ireland, the Ireland that's been exiled or the Ireland that's been controlled or dominated or oppressed or has disappeared even. She's the personification of that coming home. And it kind of echoes with earlier centuries where poets and songwriters had to write about a woman. It could be a spare van, a woman of the sky. Sometimes the woman was given a name like Roisin or Roisin Dove. And in those poems, in those songs, Ireland was personified as a female, as a woman, because it was basically illegal or against the law to write songs and poems which advocated for Ireland's freedom. So instead, a woman was substituted into the place of Ireland. So I think Pearse is echoing that a little bit. And he starts off by changing elements of the lyrics. So we have Oro Sheda Vahavalya, so you are welcome home, and Nish hacht an Taurig, now that summer is coming. So again, there's a little bit of a metaphor involved here. Yes, the summer is literally coming in a sense, but Pearse has the metaphor of summer being the days of freedom, the days that are ahead. He comes up with a title for this particular song as well. While we might know it as Oro Sheda Vahavalya, the title he gives it is Undard Féna. Now again, there's imagery and there's feeling attached to this. Undard Féna. So the Dard is something of a rally. It's a murmur, it's a sound. And there's a little bit of a link back to bronze horns that were used a long time ago, basically Celtic war instruments. And these were used to signal battle, rally warriors. And Pearse is using that deliberately with Féna, which comes from, or is closely linked to na Fianna. Na Fianna Éireann is the name of the Boy Scout movement. These are na Fianna, the warriors of Ireland. And this is their anthem. Now, I've sourced an excellent written version of this particular song, and I want to go through it almost line by line to explain to anyone who might be interested the context of the lyrics that Pearse wrote down. But The song is written in the Cló Gaelach. So if you go over to the Patreon, go to Patreon, search Undercover Irish. I'll have a copy of it there. To explain what the Cló Gaelach is, it's the traditional Irish typeface, the traditional Irish writing. So in modern times, Gaelga, the Irish language, is written with the Roman typeface. There was a number of reasons for that change. One of the main reasons was the ease at which you could print using Roman, or maybe we might say the English alphabet, but Roman lettering. So there was a switch over. But the version I have, which I'll share over on the Patreon, is in the Cló Gaelach, the original, I suppose, Irish type, the original Irish writing, the Gaelga writing, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. There's a number of changes or things that are a little bit different. So, for example, the shevu in Irish, it's the H is signified by a dot over the consonant. So, for example, instead of having CH, you have a C dot. And just a small kind of mention on that as I look at it. While I wouldn't be as familiar with the Cló Gaelach in terms of reading fluency, I look at it now and I really appreciate that actually it might have been an easier way to read Gaelga. It might have been a more natural way to read Gaelga because some of the, again, like the CH, the MH, the BH, to have the B dot, C dot, M dot, I think when you look at it like that and if you become familiar with it, actually it might make better sense that those pairings make a completely different sound. But like I said, have a look at it yourself. Let's have a look at it line by line. So, the chorus, Oro sé de Bheatha Bhaile, you are welcome home. And nish hacht an taurig, now that summer is coming. And now we're going to delve into Pádraig Pearse's mind as he writes this song and try to decode it a little bit. So the first verse is sé de Bheatha a ban beléanver, de béar grach tu a bheith in évan, de gúhi bra is shell of merlach, is tú díalta leis na ngáileamh. So the first line, sé de Bheatha a ban beléanver, literally means, welcome, O woman who is sorrowful, who is down. Again, Ireland is personified here as a woman, similar to Mother Ireland, Kathleen Ní Houlihan, similar to Gráinne Bhaile, who he uses in this, who was a real person, obviously, and the Róisín Dubh, the female character, the spare van, who was personified as Irish. Béar grach tu a bheith in évan. It's our ruin. It was our ruin that you were held in captivity. The gúhi bra is shell of merlach, your beautiful country in the possession of thieves. The gúhi bra, your native homeland, or your possessions in the hands of thieves, is to díalta leis na ngáileamh, and you were sold to foreigners. In this case, we have to be specific. Pearse is talking about English rulers here. He's talking about the English occupation, the English rulers. So not only was Ireland conquered by outsiders, but there's an explanation or there's a hint here that Ireland has been betrayed as well. So this verse sets the stall out of what Pearse is talking about. Sé de Bheatha ban beléanver, de béar grach tu a bheith in évan, the gúhi bra is shell of merlach, is tú díalta leis na ngáileamh. And then it goes back to the chorus. And then we have the second verse, or the second verse. I'm going with probably the most common version of it. Tá Gráinne Bhaile ag teacht thar sáile. So, back to the person we mentioned a second ago, Gráinne Bhaile. Gráinne Bhaile is coming back. Tá Gráinne Bhaile ag teacht thar sáile. So Gráinne Bhaile is coming back over the seas. And as I mentioned earlier, this is Charles Stuart being replaced by Gráinne Bhaile, an Irish leader, not just an Irish leader, but a legendary Irish leader, a warrior. Óglaigh armha le mar gharda, Gaelid féin is ní Frankig ná Spánig, is curig siad ruig gaolamh. So, tá Gráinne Bhaile ag teacht thar sáile. Gráinne Bhaile is coming back, across the sea. Óglaigh armha le mar gharda. Óglaigh is volunteers. Óglaigh armha, armed volunteers. Le mar gharda, with her as a guard. So the Óg Armagh, the armed volunteers, are looking after Gráinne Bhaile. Gaelid féin is ní Frankig ná Spánig, so literally means they are Irish themselves, they're Gaels, they're not French or Spanish. Now, Pearse is emphasising here that Ireland will need to be freed by the Irish people themselves. Now, there's a context to this. In the Jacobite period, while a lot of Irish people are sympathetic to the idea that changing the monarchy in Britain would lead to a better deal for Catholics, at the same time, they're trying to ally or looking to France and Spain as predominantly Catholic countries to support them. And we think about the 1798 rebellion of Wolfe Tone, which was a Republican uprising. That also was supported by France, by revolutionary France. What Pearse is saying here is we can't rely on that anymore and we need to look at ourselves and stand up. Is cuireadh siad ruaig ar gabhlamh. They will drive away the occupation again. So the idea of removing the British occupation from Ireland. Is cuireadh siad ruaig ar gabhlamh. And then we come to the third verse, and this is very much my favourite verse, for reasons that will become clear in just a second. So Pearse starts it off by saying, A bhí le rí na bhart go bhfeicim. So a bhí le means kind of thanks to. Bhí there comes from buíochas. So thanks be to rí, a bhí le rí na bhart go bhfeicim. Thanks to the God or the King of miracles. Rí na bhart go bhfeicim. That we may see, or that I might see. So basically, I pray to the Lord on high, or thanks be to the Lord on high, that I'm going to see. Muna míon bio ina dhiaidh ach seachtain. Now remember this line. If I only live for 1 week afterwards, that he would see basically the following. Gráinne Bhaile agus míle gascíoch. So Gráinne Bhaile agus míle gascí, Gráinne Bhaile, and thousands of warriors or thousands of heroes ag fógart fáin ar gabhlamh. Basically proclaiming the end of occupation, the end of foreign rule. Now, this particular verse, it's extremely powerful and it's very strong. It's a real statement. What makes it even more powerful is the way that history worked out, particularly given Pearse himself, the writer. So he's praying in this verse, A bhí le rí na bhart go bhfeicim. I pray to the Lord on high that I will see. Muna míon bio ina dhiaidh ach seachtain. If I only live for just 1 week to see. Gráinne Bhaile agus míle gascíoch. Gráinne Bhaile and thousands of warriors ag fógart fáin ar gabhlamh, declaring the end of occupation. Now, to understand why this particular verse is so powerful and so strong, we have to look at what happened to Pearse. So just think about when Pearse, Pádraig Pearse, is writing the lyrics to this song. You know, it's a dream for him. The idea that a nation which was on its knees in the aftermath of An Gorta Mór, which had its language oppressed, its culture oppressed, and even its identity hidden. He's dreaming of a time when there'll be an uprising, when there will be a rebellion, when Gráinne Bhaile and the míle gascíoch will be ag fógart fáin ar gabhlamh. And of course, in 1916, he's one of the leaders that leads that rebellion. He sees the day, he sees his dream. And even though the rebellion from the beginning is very unlikely to succeed, he understands, or he believes, that the rebellion will open the eyes of Irish people and raise a national consciousness, and that in the future a republic will be won. And the rebellion begins on the 24th of April 1916. Pádraig Pearse is the person that stands on the steps of the GPO and reads the proclamation of the Irish Republic. And after about a week of fighting, the situation becomes dire, and he surrenders on the 29th of April, accompanied by Nurse Elizabeth O'Farrell. And in order to prevent the further slaughter of Dublin citizens, that's the quote, he formally surrenders. And Pearse lives then just until the 3rd of May. So roughly a week afterwards. And on that day, he's executed at 36 years of age, along with other leaders of this rebellion. And he's executed as a result of his role in the rebellion. But there's a particular twist of history in this. Number one, I think about that line, Monamim vio in dhiag ach seachtain. If I only live for 1 week afterwards to see Grania Bhaile agus míle gasci, Grania Bhaile and thousands of warriors ag fógart fáin ar gabhailh, declaring that the end of occupation is on the way. Ag fógart fáin ar gabhailh. So Pearse did live to see his dream of an uprising in favour of Irish freedom and in favour of an Irish republic. So effectively that line in the 3rd verse is almost like a prophecy, and it has great power even now. The other reason why it's extremely powerful is because the execution of Pearse and the other leaders of 1916, as often happens, did not extinguish the flame of freedom. In fact, it was part of an inspiration in that particular period, which led to the revolutionary period of 1919 onwards, or 1918 onwards, if you include the election which led to the first Dáil era, the first independent government in modern times. So this particular song has a really deep resonance, not just culturally, but politically. We can learn so much from it, not just from its author, but the lyrics it contains. So Cárja, wherever you are in the world, over the next number of days, if you're enjoying St. Patrick's festivities or whatever it might be, and if you hear that song, do join in and think about those lyrics and think about their deep meaning. I'm massively in debt and want to say a huge gurv míle maith to Cárja to people who support this show on Patreon. If you want to get involved, go to Patreon, look up Undercover Irish. I'm extremely grateful to people who support the show and help to cover the overheads of running a podcast. In this particular show, I'll be adding, as I said earlier, the Cló Gaelach version of this particular song for you to look at. So you can look at the older style of Irish writing, the beauty of it, the power of it, and feel free, obviously, to download and share wherever you want. Cárja, if you've enjoyed this episode, please go back and listen to other episodes if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it, Cárja, if you are listening to this and you've enjoyed it, to go and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, as it makes a huge difference to the reach of the podcast. So Cárja, gurv míle maith asach bhealum. Really enjoyed this episode. One of my favourite songs, and I love talking, obviously, about music and history and putting them together. So I really enjoyed this one. So Cárja, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're well. Fannig slán, lá le Pádraig honna, agus berig bua mo Cárja.